Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. As of May 16, 2023, when I was swatted by Montgomery County police officers and a SWAT team based on fabrications, a fabricated emergency, and I was assaulted. I was an auditor in the Department of the Navy, and I had reported fraud and misconduct in the Department of Defense and in the Navy, and there were ongoing investigations. However, when I was swatted and raided in my home based on a fabricated emergency and false accusations, um, those investigations were precluded, and subsequently false charges were filed against me to discredit me, and to conduct a smear campaign against me. um, Today I'm going to just give an inventory of the false statements, the perjured statements, and falsified reports by Montgomery County police officers, including Demarcus Coleman. Demarcus Coleman is affiliated with the U.S. Navy, U.S. Marines. So is Hengjin Chen, affiliated with the U.S. military as well. So several of these officers who raided me affiliated with the U.S. military. But in any event, I've done videos explaining what's going on, how I'm suffering from injustice and being framed by Montgomery County police officers, the state attorney's office under John McCarthy, superintended by a corrupt judge, the circuit administrative judge, Judge James Bonifant, in Montgomery County, and in order to obstruct justice in the federal government complaints I had legitimately had made against Kirsten Risbeck, who's a senior executive in the Department of Defense, and Jamie A. Simon, who is a lifelong, she was born and raised in Montgomery County, Maryland. She also was in the Department of Defense, and she has had instigated the misconduct and perpetrated harassment against me and other things, including sexual harassment and fraud. And I had reported these things and had given a deposition with respect to these instances of misconduct in February of 2023. But in any event, today I'm just going to give an inventory of the numerous false statements and perjuries by Montgomery County police officers. So I'm going to start with the incident on May 16, 2023, when they assaulted me. So I was swatted. Now, a swatting is it's a criminal harassment tactic in which um, a false incident report, false emergency, fabricated emergency is made to law enforcement or emergency responders with the objective of generating a large police and SWAT presence, right? A SWAT team at the residence of the victim, right? And the intention is normally to cause chaos and to cause violence on the victim. In my case, that was exactly what happened. I've done videos talking about what happened, so I'm not going to go into that. I was shot, tasered in the head. These are permanent scarrings from where the projectile that was shot in my head by whom police officer I later learned to be uh, Jeffrey Ray, right? He shot me with a projectile. I learned it was a taser dart. He shot it into my head, right? And I was tasered multiple times. I also have bruises all over my body, permanent bruises all over my body. I'd been tasered multiple times. Then eventually, my apartment was chemical bombed with some kind of toxin. I learned it was tear gas and pepper spray, and the police came in and removed me naked and handcuffed me and dumped me in a hospital. I had no idea what was going on. On that day, I was actually scheduled for ostensibly a Navy General Officer Professions program with a Lieutenant Devon Blake on May 16, 2023, when this happened. But it's a sign that it was actually orchestrated by the Department of the Navy, and it came from some kind of order from above, right? It could have gone all the way from Secretary of the Navy, Carlos del Toro, because I was reporting secretly to the Auditor General of the Navy. And if anything like that, unless she instigated it, but she sort of cut off communication and told me something had happened, right? That some people I had reported had instigated some kind of sham event, sham incident. I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm just going to dive into the false statements by Montgomery County Police and their misconduct. So they assaulted me, tased me, and all that. So when I get to the hospital, right, I'm dumped in the hospital. One of the things that I received was a sheriff's deputy then comes, to me around May 18, 2023. I was initially at Suburban Hospital, right? Because I was all bandaged, right? There was a bandage on my head, on my arms, and my wrist, because I'd been injured severely. And so I was in pain. So he gave me a peace order. I couldn't read it then. Then I was transferred to another hospital because they told me that they just told me all sorts of lies, all sorts of stuff. I filed a complaint, malpractice complaint against Suburban Hospital and MedStar Hospital. But when I read the peace order, one Germa Shumi, my neighbor, I never knew what his name was. He claimed um, that I had kidnapped him on, this was on May 14, twisted his arm, took his phone, right? And that he managed to escape. I told him I was law enforcement. That's what he wrote. Germa Shumi, I later, uh, learned that he can't speak a word of English. I'd never spoken with him. But this Germa Shumi on May 14, 2023, had actually assaulted me with Jide Wari and one other young man. Jide Wari is a Howard University professor. I had no idea he had gone to file a false emergency evaluation petition. That's another instance of swatting, right? So he fabricated something that I was going through some kind of mental health crisis and that I was a threat, a danger, that I was threatening to shoot him and things like that. So those are all elements of swatting. I was not aware of any of this. So there were many false incidents that the police suborned in order to perpetrate this sorting event. So Jide Wari, Germa Shumi, they were not the only ones. So what the police did was they suborned them to commit perjury. So there's a perjury of Germa Shumi. Everything he wrote was a fabrication. There's the perjury of Jide Wari. I didn't know that until several months. I didn't get the document until maybe October, November, 2023, after I was released from wrongful detention, right? So I never got notice. They tried to seal it, but so there are multiple instances in which the police suborned perjury. So uh, so I was then when I was released on. So prior to that, when I saw the false emergency, it's a false peace order, I called the district courts and immediately informed them from the hospital, and they told me that I should come over and they would issue an arrest warrant because you're not supposed to it's perjury, right? Writing a false complaint, right, to through the courts is perjury, and it's punishable by an arrest, imprisonment or a fine. So they told me to come over to the courts, but the hospital prevented me from going, saying, well, that it was a judge who certified me, forced me, that I had to be there. I had no idea. So fortunately, I'm a lawyer, and they had gotten me there on false pretenses because I had been shot in the head, so I had wanted to do a brain scan, right? That was what they told me that I was going to do. I wanted to do a brain scan, and I was in pain all over my body. So I'd gone through, so that was, what I was interested in. So instead, they now said, well, they want the psychiatrist to treat me. First of all, you have to evaluate. They have to evaluate you because I'd never sat down with a psychiatrist. I didn't know who, this person was, and I have a right to have my family present because my family in Nigeria had never taken me to a psychiatrist before in my life. So I said, fine, no problem. I asked for my mother. So eventually, and I said, no, I'm not going to talk to a psychiatrist. I'm not going to allow an evaluation because that's my constitutional right. That's actually within your constitutional right. You can deny an evaluation or treatment. You can deny it, and you have a right to have your family present. That's within HIPAA rules. So I insisted, and they have, fortunately, in the hospitals, they have what's called an advisor, a patient's rights advisor. So the patient's rights advisor advocates for you. So the doctor instead, so I wanted to leave, right? You have a right to go to a panel, and you want to know that I'm not going to stay in this hospital. I want to leave. So um, there was this judge, an administrative judge, who came, and they hear the they hear the issue, the matter, because I was saying no, I have to leave. I'm not going to stay. I have a right. So what happened was the uh, one of the people that appeared as a witness, because all up until this time, this was around May 26th, 2023, I'd received treatment for my body because I was in pain. They told me my kidneys had been damaged from the tasing, right? So I was on drip because of the liquid drips, right? Intravenous, just liquid drips for my kidneys, right? And so, and painkillers for the pain all over my body. But I refused to speak with a psychiatrist. I refused to do an evaluation with a psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist, it was some white guy, right? Some white guy, and I refused. I said, no, I'm not going to speak with this guy. That I have a right to have, that there's nothing wrong with me, and I have a right to have my family present, right? My mother's never taken me to a psychiatrist. My mother's alive. You can't tell all sorts of fabrication. So one of the things that happened, one of the reasons, normal circumstances, maybe I would have, talked with someone, but because of the fabrication, here I am seeing a peace order. Somebody has fabricated something that I kidnapped someone. So I knew, okay, this is, and especially with all the things that had been happening, right? From May 16, right? That the way the police came to raid me, right? Kidnap me. So many things happened. All my electronic devices had been hacked on that day. And it was just crazy what was going on. My phone, I was just locked in. There was a drone at my window. The way the 40 cops came to raid me, I'm not Al Qaeda. What's going on? The way they had falsely imprisoned me initially, they locked me inside my apartment, blocked my peephole, like some kind of, like they came to pick up a terrorist, right? So I said, no, I'm not going to speak with anybody. I want to have my family, people I know. So they just kidnapped me under color of law. I took me somewhere. Nobody, my family was not there. It turns out they said they got authorization to do so from this demented man, Jide Iwariri, a Howard University professor who had gone to tell lies. So he was part of the swatting. He fabricated all his statements, committed perjury. So in any event, I now sit down with this. I sit down. I have a conference, and with the administrative judge. His name was John Hart. There was another person present, right? And so they appeared. The officer, the medical doctor, fabricated everything he said, committed perjury. I was stunned. I'm a law graduate, and perjury. It was just something I assumed wasn't done because it's a serious offense to commit perjury in court. And here I was sitting down. Another one called Olu Bumish, the psychologist who wore a mask. She had a Nigerian name. They just fabricated everything they said. Complete lies. So I was stunned. Then a police officer appeared named Jeffrey Ray. Apparently he's the one who shot me in the head. But he didn't say so then. Instead, he just said something completely false, right? Jeffrey Ray said that he said uh, that he used racial epithets, calling me an animal, that I was so strong. I was like a beast. So they called me an animal, and that they were tasing me, that they were trying to get me to, arrest me, and but I was refusing. I was refusing to stay down. And he said why they were coming to arrest me. Okay, he didn't say any of that, but he was just saying. And he talked about how he'd never killed someone before. He's been in the force 20 years, but he wanted to kill me because I was an animal and I was threatening them. He was acting like he was emotional. So I see the things um, the instances of police assaults when police kill black men, and they demonize the black man who's dead, who was a victim, and then they try and instead they sympathize with the white cop who committed murders because he felt threatened, right? Instead, he was delusional. So this was what I was sitting down experiencing, because all on that day, on May 16, I knew I was in my home, not committing any crime. I lived alone, and I was falsely imprisoned and raided and assaulted. I was the one who was almost killed. But here was this guy now saying, oh, that he felt, that he was just saying all sorts of crazy lies. Everything he said was a lie. And then he said he wanted to use his Glock to kill me. That's 4 times because he was saying I was an animal. And I was stunned that the judge was letting him go on this way. So Jeffrey Ray was saying I was an animal and he wanted to kill me. So he just dehumanized me. And he said they tased me. One of the times they tased me, I ran into my apartment and I got on my kitchen counter. And then he said I started masturbating. How did he see me from the corridor? So that's complete fabrication. I'm like, what? Masturbating. He said I started masturbating. I'm like, what? All of fabrication. So obviously, so the judge said no, that I should that I'm not admitting that I have a mental illness, then so it must be very severe that the hospital should hold me. So I said no. I appealed it. You have a right to appeal. Then the doctor now came the very next day. The doctor now said, well, okay, that he's going to let me go, but I should volunteer. I said I'm not volunteering because he had lied. So while I was there, amongst the lies that the hospital was telling me, because I didn't know the documents, I didn't know what was going on, why I'd been raided and I was just brought to the hospital, right? So one of the things that the hospital was saying was that I had threatened to bomb people, that I had a baseball bat and I wanted to hit people, that I wanted to stab people, I wanted to kill people, all sorts of lies. I said, no, that's not, is this Twilight Zone? That's a lie. I was in my home. That's a complete fabrication. So you can see why I was refusing to actually have an evaluation, because I said, no, I'm not going to have any kind of psychiatric evaluation because you guys have just told a complete fabrication. And so, you've broken, I don't trust you, right? And so I said, no, that's not going to happen. And then I want my family present. How can, all these fabrications, I had no idea what was going on. Why they telling lies? So they decided to discharge me, right? When they discharged me, they didn't tell me they were going to have cops at the door. The so one sergeant, John King, once I was out, because I was in a wheelchair, he told me to get up, arrested me. I said, okay, what's the charge? Why am I being arrested? Because I'd been asking for an attorney while I was there, since I saw what was going on. And they said that I have to provide the number myself and all that. I'd never been in trouble, and so here I was. They held me without my family, without an attorney, in nothing, because they'd removed me naked from my apartment, right? No phone, nothing. That's locked me, dumped me in a hospital. So I'd been kidnapped on the color of law. So in any event, let me continue with the falsifications by the police. So that was the first one that I noted by Jeffrey Ray, right? When he falsified that I'd been masturbating and that I wanted to attack him, right? So when eventually they looked at the body cam, right? Just going to fast forward to debunk to show how he lied. The body cam showed he lied about the masturbation. I never did that. I don't know why he said that. He wanted to dehumanize and debase me. Then he also lied. It turned out when they were looking at the body, my attorney, a private attorney that GDWRA got for me to represent me, he focused on his body cam and he noticed that Jeffrey Ray was an officer who shot me in the head, right? So he lied, and I guess he basically was telegraphing his intent, projecting what he wanted to really do. His intent was to grab his Glock and kill me, but instead he grabbed his taser gun and shot me in the head. So he fabricated, he lied, uh, and said each time he wanted to shoot me, that was what he said during the hearing. He said each time he wanted to shoot me, another police officer tased me, and basically, and it happened like 4 or 5 times, right? And basically, he was saying that the tasing from some other police officer was what saved my life. So he'd say each time he wanted to shoot me with his Glock, somebody else would tase me and he'd stop. He would, restrain himself. And each time somebody else, he wanted to shoot me, somebody else would tase me. And this happened multiple times because I was tased like about 5 times, right? So these guys were trying to kill me. Um, it was a severe assault, right? I literally fought to stay alive on that day, and I thank God spared my life. So I, this guy, Sergeant John King, when he now got me, they placed me in handcuffs. First time cuffs had ever been on my hands. No lawyer. They didn't read me my Miranda rights, right? They didn't read me my Miranda rights. They didn't tell me what the charge was. So they take me to Montgomery County Detention Center. There, when we got there, they take they do your processing and everything. So they took my fingerprinting, took my swab. I'd never done that before in my life. This was my first time at a police station where they were doing all this stuff on me. And so um, they did all of this stuff without me knowing what the charges are, right? So one of the things then the police officers asked me, I found out that there were many Africans at the police station, and one of them asked me, "Am I an American citizen?" I said yes. They said, "Good, don't worry, you'll be fine." So it was my first time. Because I was like, I'm still stunned. They hadn't told me why they were arresting me. I just knew that the police had raided me. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm not a criminal. In fact, I was working for the U.S. federal government in the Department of the Navy. I didn't commit any crime, and I'd just been removed from my home. 40 cops had come to raid me, a SWAT team, violently, almost killing me, dehumanizing me. And they had evacuated my building in the process. So I had no idea what was going on. So eventually, anyway, while they were doing all the processing and everything, this guy, Sergeant John King, right, this racist white cop, right, I don't know if it was a sheriff or if it was with Montgomery County, he got out his private cell phone and wanted to take a photo of me on his private cell phone. And I said, no, you can't do that. That's illegal, right? But he did anyway. So that was a violation. So no problem. So that was Sergeant John King. He took an inappropriate photo, unauthorized photo of me on his private cell phone, right, in a dehumanizing manner, right? So when he had the handcuffs on me, so no trouble. So um, he eventually gave me the charge statement, and I'll do a subsequent video in which I read all the perjured documents, right? That's involved in the case. That's the charge statement from DeMarcus Coleman, the fabricated emergency evaluation petition from Jide Wariri. I've done one before, but I'll just do one in terms of just the documents, and then the fabricated peace order from Germa Shumi. So the charge statement said it was written by police officer DeMarcus Coleman. It wrote in a very derogatory manner, right? Trying to put me in a bad light, right? Like I'm a notorious criminal that's known to the police, that I just attacked somebody on May 14, talked about me being in an altercation on May 14, 2023. The police responded, not clarifying, right? So they garbled the information, misrepresented it like I attacked my neighbors, not saying that, well, Jide Warrior, my neighbors attacked me on May 14, 2023, right? And the police knew. Fortunately, a friend of mine spoke with the police on that day, had witnesses. So they misrepresented the incident that happened. That was DeMarcus Coleman. So that's one of the lies I was told. Then he wrote that, well, I threatened to shoot Jide Wariri twice, that I wanted to shoot Jide Wariri. Where he got that information from, I don't know. I've never threatened to shoot Jide Wariri. I didn't have a gun to do it, and at no time did I threaten to shoot him. So he also wrote that I said that my home is a military base. It was a lie. Interestingly, he wrote that I worked in the auditor as an auditor in the Department of the Navy, and I was recently fired. And he wrote it, in a large exclamation point and everything, like he was happy. Typically, Americans, if you know that I work in the as an auditor in the Department of the Navy, you would, and somebody's been fired. Being fired is, so you empathize with such people, right? Typically, so can you imagine, if you can even just imagine if it was a white person, white guy that had been fired, had a great job as an auditor in the Navy, and he's fired, they'd sympathize with him. They wouldn't go and lock him up in jail. They wouldn't suddenly start saying he's a criminal. Because for me to have a job as an auditor in the US government, the Department of the Navy, I was a civilian, not military. To get that job, I was working in a classified area. You know that I'm an upstanding person, right? So this guy writes all these derogatory, defamatory things. So you could see that he's acting as an agent for somebody, right? For the military, right? In order to discredit me. So he writes all of that, but all of that's a fabrication. Immediately at the detention center, I called Jide Wari immediately and I asked, I said, "Hey, Jide, when did I read him the charge statements. Immediately he said, "No, that's not true. That can be corrected." And there was a sergeant, police officer, correctional officer standing with me. Interestingly, he was Yoruba as well, Nigerian. His name was Sergeant Ajibade. I think his first name is Solomon. Sergeant Ajibade, Sergeant Solomon Ajibade. I think that's what his first name. But in any event, I know his name was Sergeant Ajibade. He heard Jide Wari say, "That's false, right? I did not threaten to shoot him. That's a mistake." He said that will be corrected. So, so that was another falsification by the police, right? So they'd suborned perjury. Eventually, um, I had a bond hearing on June the 2nd, right? Because I was arrested June 1st, 2020. Um, I guess it was close to evening or whatever. But I was placed in a holding cell for a very long time. I was freezing, so uh, like it was a terrible condition, right? Very terrible condition. So then I was out um, and immediately they just start putting these jail clothes on you like a criminal. They don't let you wear your clothes. Montgomery County is a terrible place. So I was all the while when they get you out, I was going for my bond hearing, and I was asking, trying to get that, I was trying to get a private attorney because nobody knew where I was, right? I'd just been taken from the police, and I have family, I have friends. Nobody knew where I was except this guy, Jide, and another friend of mine. I called another friend of mine that I'd known over 20 years. She's African American. Fortunately, she was one who was a witness to could corroborate that, well, that the charge statement by DeMarcus Coleman regarding May 14, 2023 was a fabrication. So the one of the things that the correctional officers and the law enforcement, they just coerce you. You're under duress and they coerce you to do what they want to do. They just wear down your defenses when you're saying, "No, this is what I want." They continue. They stop you because I was like, "No, I want a private attorney. Let me get a private attorney," because this was serious, right? They charged me with 5 first-degree felony assault charges that I assaulted. I did a first-degree felony assault on 5 police officers. It turns out it was these 5 police officers that tased me. And eventually, all of those charges for the first degree felony assault charges, they were all dismissed. So I was looking at 25 years each, right? So the police officers lied again. That's another instance. They lied saying, "I assaulted them. I did a first-degree felony assault on them," right? All a lie, fabrication. The private attorney, the same Jide Wari got from me, he had to wait in jail for weeks for him to review all the body cam, right? He saw it was a lie. I didn't touch any one of them. As he told the judge in July of 2023, when they had my bond hearing, again, another bond hearing, he told him 40 cops showed up in my house, right? That it was so much commotion that in the midst of it, miraculously I didn't touch one person because they were now giving me all these false narratives of what happened. I was the one, I was there, I knew what happened, and they were saying everything. So basically they were gaslighting me. At the hospital they told me I was threatening to bomb people. I said no. saying I was waving a baseball bat. Where am I going to get a baseball bat from? I was trying to stab people, all sorts of stuff. The neighbor said, "Oh, that I kidnapped him," and called him said I was law enforcement, stole his phone. I'm like, what's going on? Are you gaslighting me? So everybody's just telling this false narrative. I'm like, what's going on? So eventually, I was released on August the 3rd, 2023, because, but the case should have been dismissed then. So the private attorney got all the five first degree felony charges dismissed. So that's another instance of falsification, right? False statements by the police. And so you see, the cops just keep telling lies, committing perjury, telling lies. And people say they have absolute immunity. No, absolute immunity, if they make an error, right? If they make an error in good faith, not in bad faith, if they intentionally falsify evidence, then that's police misconduct, and then they can be punished for it. That's actually the law. But apparently, cops just do things that are illegal, right? At least in Montgomery County. So, um, so on June the 2nd, 2023, I go for my bond hearing before a judge called Sherry Deborah Cook, right? So Cook, or Sherry Deborah Cook, or whatever. So that's her name. So this guy, the guy who came, one of the cops who came to pick me up, he claimed his name was Sergeant John King. I don't know if he was telling the truth because I asked for his name, right? Then he now gives a statement, right? Because my public defender, they made me use a public defender. The public defender said, "Hey, don't worry, I'm going to get you bond. You've never been arrested before. You work for the federal government. You hold the top secret clearance. You're educated, everything. The judge's going to be impressed with you. They're going to release you on bond. Don't worry about it," right? So, but he goes, "But don't worry, let me talk," right? Let me talk. So they didn't let me get a private attorney because I was trying to make phone calls that, okay, call me a private attorney. I'll pay them. I had money, cash in my bank account. Somehow the attorney I was gonna try and make an arrangement. But these guys, the correctional officer said, "No, just save your money, that these public defenders are good. Try them out." So here I was coerced, right? There was nothing I could do. I kept pleading, saying, "No, no, no, no. I won't, help me call a private attorney, help me call a private attorney." But in any way, they denied it. They made me use a public defender. So after he made the statement, and then for some reason there was this static going on, so you could barely hear. Sergeant John King, the guy who came to arrest me, some white guy, smug looking guy, you could see a white nationalist cop, right? So he comes out, he says that they came to my home on May 14, knocking on my home door peacefully. He emphasized that they wanted to bring an an emergency evaluation petition by Jide Wari, that I threatened to shoot Jide Wari. And so they came to just deliver this, serve me the EP. That's what they said, because that's a law. The EP, they're supposed to give you notice. The EP is not saying you've committed a crime, right? So, um, so they came and they said, as soon as they opened the door, they said they knocked on my door. I came out with a baseball bat. I wanted to swing in a baseball bat and I wanted to stab them. I'm like, what? So that's another lie. So the body cam shows that's a fabrication. I don't own a baseball bat. So I was like thinking, why are all these people telling lies? Is there some kind of, what's going on? I knew it was lies and it wasn't mistaken identity because I was literally removed from my home. It wasn't like they saw me somewhere. If they had seen me outside or somewhere else and they had, just taken me peacefully. No, I was removed in a violent manner, and I knew the cops were just telling lies, a bunch of canards, right? So that's another lie by Sergeant John King. He was the same guy who took an inappropriate photo of me. By the way, the police had removed me naked, and in discovery, I would see that the police had recorded me, right, naked in the nude. So that's a violation of 18 USC section 1801, right? Like in this obscene filming of an obscene manner, right? Violating my dignity. So it's a crime without my consent. So they handcuffed me and recorded me, took photos of me and recorded me naked in completely nude, right? All my body completely nude in an undignified manner, dehumanizing me, in suburban hospital, right? And that's part of um, the evidence, the discovery that female public defenders have been looking at. They've been reviewing that, they've been looking at it, right? So in any event, this guy tells a lie. The judge says, "Oh, she finds me dangerous. That they should hold me without bond. Bro, that I'm dangerous to the community." I was like stunned, and I was like, it was just a complete lie. My public defender didn't say anything, and that was that, right? Because my public defender said I shouldn't say anything in court, and besides, I was appearing by conference. I wasn't actually in court, right? Because I was still in the detention center, and they let me appear via conference, right? They didn't let me appear physically in court, and I couldn't talk, you know. So they just held me without bond. I was there detained for a long time until I was released. So um, these are the fabrications that the police made. Eventually, when I came out, I filed a bunch of things. I filed a prosecutorial misconduct against the Zomo to file the charges. From her responses, because she defended herself against the Maryland Bar Association, and so I saw the police reports written by a Sergeant Charles Drengwitz, and it was a fabrication. So on May 14, 2023, the police, after Jide Iwari and the girl Mishumi had assaulted me, and my friend talked to the police. The police decided to go and file a false incident report. One of the things that, even though Charles Drengwich wrote that he claimed that Jide is my uncle, and Jide said I was mentally ill or some kind of stuff, having a breakdown, I'm mentally ill, and I was dangerous. But the guy, Sergeant Charles Drengwich, noted. He said he talked to me. I didn't. He didn't observe anything. I didn't say anything threatening. I didn't. I wasn't suicidal, and I wasn't homicidal. I didn't say anything like that. But he advised them to go to the judge, to a judge, right? If his story was accurate. So apparently Jide Wari had given this false story or whatever. So that was what I had gathered from the police report of Charles Drengwich. Now he had a partner, a female partner, who fabricated everything she wrote. She said I was erratic when they saw me. And by the way, she wrote erratic, right? Erradic. So a cop who can't spell erratic, I guess she shouldn't really be making it will be hard for her to make a determination on what it really is erratic behavior. Maybe she meant something else. Erratic, I don't know what erratic is, you know. But so she falsified her police report, and then the police wrote that it was a mental illness crisis. They falsified, and then Charles Drengwitz also wrote that, well, that I stole this phone from the girl Mishumi and he recovered it. Now, on the May 14, when they assaulted me, three of them came. There was a younger Ethiopian looking guy. Germashumi, they're both Ethiopians, but Germashumi, like, is a middle-aged guy. So I guess that younger guy was probably his son. He dropped the phone intentionally and they ran. There was like a timer thing. It had like a timer on it. So I saw that it was staged. So, but of course it was annoying. My neighbor came out and picked up the phone. I told her what happened. She saw what happened through the peephole. She was in apartment 511. She picked up the phone. I never touched the phone. It was in the corridor. She took it. And so Charles Drengwitz knew. Uh, he fabricated information saying he recovered the phone, saying I stole a phone. Fabrication. So they suborned Germashumi to go and file the false peace order, because they filed the peace order on May 17, 2023, after I'd been removed from my home, assaulted by the police on May 16, 2023. So that was by the it was the police that suborned Germashumi, right? So they induced him to go and file a perjured statement. And the reports by Surgeon Charles Drengwitz, they fabricated. He wrote misleading and fabricated. And his female partner wrote something completely misleading and fabricated. Um, Now, apparently, Jide Iwari had already gone. I asked him not to come to my home May 13, 2023, dropped the phone on him. Apparently, he now told me later on that he and his wife decided to go and report me to the police. So I was like, "You want to report me to the police for what?" And I said, "Don't come to my home. I dropped the phone on you because you're harassing me." So I don't know what he went to say. So eventually, when he came to my home on May 14, 2023, he said the crisis team were outside. He told me this bizarre story, and they said, so him and the girl Shumi, they were supposed to induce me, get me out of my apartment. So attempted kidnapping because they can't force me. So they said the police said they couldn't come themselves because they'll be violating my rights. That was what he said, or something like that. So he was the one they sent to violate my rights, which is bizarre. So in any event, what other falsified police reports were they? Were there? So then I saw in their Zomwall statements, I saw 40 statements from cops. 40 different cops wrote testimonies, their own reports and everything. So there were a lot. They're just you can imagine somebody who'd never been arrested before. Why 40 cops should write statements concerning me, including one Robert Sheehan, so many different cops, Boti, uh, Gore, so many of different ones. Demarcus Coleman, fabrications, So these are the main falsifications, fabricated statements, and subordination of perjury that the police did. So Jide Wari, I'll do another video and I'll talk about the fabrications of Jide Wari in the emergency evaluation petition. Everything he wrote was a fabrication, right? It was a complete fabrication. Everything was a lie. Besides, that document didn't also have probable cause. And I was never served that document. I was never given notice or a hearing to dispute it. So at the administrative hearing, they didn't tell me why I was there. They didn't say refer to the emergency evaluation petition. Nothing. The doctor just fabricated how I acted in the hospital. Everything was a lie. At the hospital, the nurses, all of them, staff, they were very helpful to me. In fact, they were the ones who helped me because they were Nigerian. The Nigerian psychiatrists there, they would come and they were the ones who were telling me, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Immediately they said, avoid your uncle because they could see what was going on, the falsification. They said, there's nothing wrong with you. Your uncle, stay away from him. As they were referring to Jide Wari, and they were the ones who said Jide Wari has dementia, but is in denial, right? But they were not my attending physician, so they couldn't treat me. So one of the first things I asked for that, okay, if you want me to have an evaluation, I want to have these Nigerian psychiatrists because there are Nigerian psychiatrists there. And I was friendly with them, right? Because they knew these were good people, right? These Nigerians. Oh my gosh. Nigerians are educated, and I'm glad. But they had this white racist guy who insisted he wanted to be the one to treat me. I said no, because he was fabricating stuff. I said, no, I'm not going to. The Nigerians here, they'll understand my culture. When I tell them stuff, they'll listen. I'm not going to do that, right? I've said it's my constitutional right to have my family present. I have the right to refuse any evaluation, right? That's my right because it's my zone of privacy rights. I haven't come here, right? I haven't consented. I was raided and removed. There's no basis. Nobody had told me why. Okay, the basis for the judge, the pretext for the judge taking me was that I had kidnapped somebody, committed these heinous crimes, that I kidnapped somebody, that I was threatening to bomb people, I was threatening to shoot people. All a fabrication. At least let me appear in court and defend myself. So these were the fabrications by Montgomery County police officers, and something else happened. Um, Eventually, I got in touch with NAACP in Montgomery County, got in touch with other people who helped me. An investigator went in. He found I'd been robbed. My wristwatches, luxury items had all been stolen. My cash, my wallet was stolen. My certificate of naturalization, which is a felony, was stolen by Montgomery County Police. They're the ones who had custody of the place. My U.S. passport ID, not the U.S. passport itself. Fortunately, I have that, but my passport ID card, um, that was stolen. My social security card was stolen. So my identity had basically been stolen. I had cash in the house because I was getting ready to send money home. I sent money, people I was supporting, the cash was stolen. So the police actually committed an armed robbery under color of law. For a long time, I was led to understand that it was in custody with the police. Eventually, when I contacted the police. The person I was asked to contact, the custodian or whatever, said no, they didn't. The police said they didn't take anything. So the police robbed me, committed an armed robbery under color of law, and then the perjured statements. They took my, so they took valuables, my camera, valuables, and then they destroyed my things, stole clothes. It's sickening. Montgomery County Police and the SWAT team. I don't know if what the SWAT team did, but I don't know who stole these things. Very likely Montgomery County Police, because they're the ones who got me out of the place. And I saw pictures. They were taking picture of a knife, saying that's a knife I threatened them with. 40 cops, the SWAT team came because I had a knife. I'm entitled to hold a knife in my apartment. So I cook, right? I post my stuff online. So they fabricated something. So they instigated, orchestrated a swatting, and it was done with. I subsequently saw documents, false reports, falsified statements by a Navy person I'd worked with, that whom I had reported for fraud and misconduct, Nathan R. Brown. He's a white guy. And the statements of Nefertari McBride, they were falsifying things. So there were this clique who said they wanted me to be a member of their family. They were committing fraud in the Department of the Navy. I reported this to the Auditor General of the Navy, but she let it happen. So, and it went, so they'd written things that were falsified, fabricated. So those are the instances of misconduct, the assault, subordination of perjury, and perjury, the falsified statements, and robbery by Montgomery County police officers and their partners. Anyway, I'll stop this video here. So later on, so again, all sorts of false statements, inconsistent statements came out. In court, Thea Zumwalt, the person who filed the false charges, then at one time she said, well, it was my building landlord, the building owners called the police and said they should kick me out. That's illegal, right? The lease is in my home. I hadn't committed any crime. I have a right of usufruct to be there. By the way, I'd filed a complaint against the building because they had been doxing me. They were filing these false failure to pay notices in Maryland case search, right? So doxing and swatting go together, right? So, and in my case, as a government employee, government auditor, it's a way they've been using, like bad actors, malicious actors have been using to target government people working in government, or activists. I write, so anybody could have targeted me. But in this case, I know it was the people that I had reported for fraud in the government. They instigated the swatting because there are all these key elements, right? That they're falsified reports. In fact, one of them had falsified a statement saying I was working in a skiff, saying I abused the skiff. So that was a fabrication, right? So that in a skiff, that's making it look like, well, you went to go and try and get government secret. You wanted to get government secret out to go and sell it to someone or something like that. By the way, I had used a private civil rights attorney who was an ex-DOJ prosecutor and ex-military intelligence. So he got information and said, look, the military went to go and declare you a threat, so did a FISA on you. He's going to, at this false case in Maryland, it's because of the accusations I made of the senior executives against 4 senior executives in the Department of Defense and Department of the Navy. That's what triggered it, that they automatically do some kind of FISA and that they're going to just, try and retaliate, that's normal. So the police ended up falsifying statements, committing perjury in order to, and filed false charges against me. So the police who assaulted me then filed false charges against me and committed robbery under color of law. But anyway, I'll stop this video here. And so here is a record of the litany of false statements and perjuries and subornation of perjury by Montgomery County police officers, including Sergeant Charles Drengwitz, he's retired now. Hek Jin Chen, he has an affiliation with the U.S. military. He's a reserve or so. And DeMarcus Coleman, he also has an affiliation with the Navy and Marines. And so they filed false charges against me and the others, Boti Bigore and some others, about 40 of them. My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I'll keep you posted. Thank you.